Hello everybody and welcome back to the Leeds Lens for your transfer news special. And I've got to be honest with you all, it's not really a special video today. Truthfully, there is a rumour that we're going to talk a bit about with this Eduard Spertsyan. Maybe there's something in that, probably not, but we will talk about it. But we're also going to sort of talk a bit about the transfer window, where we're at. Are Leeds United going to do anything before the end of the transfer window? Because we have got updates from Graham Smith, we've got updates from Isaac Johnson. We've got updates from Sky as well, all talking about what potentially Leeds United will or will not do between now and the rest of the season. We're also going to have a look at other rumours and other transfers that are going on. Obviously, I think it's important we do look at our rivals at this moment in time and see how they're getting on in the last moment of the January transfer window. It looks like West Ham are closing on the signing of Axel Disasi as well, so we'll talk a bit about that. There's also still potential that we get Strand Larsen, but this would rely on Mateta not going to AC Milan, then them pulling out of the Strand Larsen deal, and then maybe the off chance that then Wolves decide that they'll sell him to Leeds, which sounds like an absolute long shot at this moment. But that's kind of the structure of the play at this moment in time. Obviously, if you could help the channel as well by dropping a like, subscribe, all that good stuff does massively help the channel. Obviously, it is transfer deadline day. This is probably the last video I'm going to do now while the transfer window is open. So if you could do that last bit of support, that would be fantastic. The spot, as I said, over this window has just been ridiculous. It's took the channel almost to another level. So I genuinely really appreciate it. Even if Leeds United are not doing well sort of in the market, I think obviously I do appreciate you all guys tuning in as always. Stephen says, not Spertsyan again. Every time there's a window, we get linked. I know, mate, which is why I've not gone heavy on it. I know it's in the title a bit, but normally I'd put like Spertsyan to Leeds, but I just can't really see it at this moment. I will talk about it, but I can't massively see it. Richards, haven't seen any links to Ryan Kent. Leeds journalist asleep at the wheel. I know, mate. Just give me Ryan Kent link. That's what we're asking for, isn't it, Rich? That's all we're asking for, mate. Radibit 57 says, such a risk this, but not surprised. Yeah, I've seen a lot of people saying that online, and I must admit, I'm a bit sort of surprised at the sort of level of hatred online at this moment in time. I get people are sort of emotional, and I get people are sort of angry with the situation. And when you look at sort of what other clubs are trying to do in and around us, the sort of I can see why the frustration is there. I must admit, I'm maybe on the different side of this. I'm not probably as frustrated as people are, almost because I expected this. Like going into the transfer window, like we talked about in yesterday's video, I didn't expect this to be a good window for Leeds United. We got told in the summer it wasn't going to be a good window for Leeds United. I actually thought going into it, we weren't going to get anyone. And actually, the fact that we've got Buonanotte, I think, is a bit of a bonus, if I'm being totally honest, because I do think he'll end up being a starter by the end of the season. I do think he'll be a really good addition for us. But I wasn't expecting much. And I also thought that other teams around us, because of their sort of naturally easier PSR wiggle room, they'd have a lot more success in the market than we did, and that's obviously coming to fruition now. Obviously, West Ham have spent quite a bit of money. We can talk about their scattergun approach. Obviously, Forest are spending quite a bit of money. The only thing I will say though with all of this is, I know we're all frustrated at this moment with Leeds United, and I get that, and that's absolutely fine. And look, we'll talk all about the review at 8 PM. Talk about all this, how this transfer window has sort of subsided for Leeds United. The only thing I do want to say is, I've looked around other fan bases, and I've looked across loads of fan bases this morning to see where others are feeling about it. I haven't seen a fan base that's particularly happy with their transfer window as a blanket statement. Literally everyone's saying that the club's a mess, it's a shambles. So this isn't a solely Leeds United thing. Like, even if you look at Forest, who are doing a lot of deals at this moment in time, or trying to do a lot of deals. Obviously, they've just signed Ortega, which I think people would obviously like that for Leeds United because of obviously the state of Dallum in the game, and Perry hasn't really worked so far this season. So I get that. But they've gone for Engels today, they've gone for Hackney, they've both failed. And all the Forest fans are talking about is the sort of scattergun emotional approach that Marinakis is trying to do. So we can talk about Leeds United not doing anything, and it sort of being a situation where we feel like we're sat back not doing anything. But then if we were doing the opposite and we were trying to do a Forest and do all these late deals and it wasn't coming off, we'd be saying the same thing as well. So you have got to remain that in someone. As I said, I've literally gone through every club, and basically every club in the league is not happy at all with their transfer window, which is kind of, I think, where we've got to view it a bit, and I think that's where context has to be applied. Anyway, let's talk a bit about sort of Leeds United and their one potential link, which is, of course, Eduard Spertsyan. So according to Daily Mail this morning from Dominic King, I believe, He said that Leeds United are exploring a deal for Eduard Spertsyan. And obviously we know this lad, he was obviously linked to us at the back end of the summer, in the summer transfer window, attacking midfielder, can play a bit deeper, can play in the holding position as well at times. I've never seen him as that. From what I've seen, he's not, which I've watched him a few times when he's played for Armenia in sort of international games. He's always been a number 10 for me, / number 8. He's not a number 6 at all. I've seen it online. I just don't agree with that. He has obviously had a decent time in the Russian league, but we've talked about if we are going to bring players in January, they've got to be players that for me are going to come and play and be in the team straight away, like we've seen what City have done with obviously Semenyo and Guehi, where they've been able to come in. Obviously, we're not going to sign them to, but they're examples of players that have come straight in the team. I think Buonanotte is probably an example of that as well, with what we've done so far. And I don't think Spertsyan is the position we need, nor do I think it's going to happen, nor do I think it's a good idea to buy a Russian league player in the January transfer window when it's going to naturally take an adaptation time. The whole thing seems nonsense to me. So look, it might happen, it probably won't happen, but that is the kind of one player that we are linked to at this moment in time. Offering 40 million for Strand Larsen, don't see where we can't just get a player with that money to improve another position. This is interesting, Jacob, and this was actually being covered this morning from Isaac Johnson, obviously, who works for Leeds Live, and he basically said, he was talking about Strand Larsen, there's loads of bits actually on Strand Larsen that he came out with, but he basically said that, look, Leeds United's plan, and we've talked about this before, is that they were going to do a Strand Larsen-esque deal in the summer, but basically, because he came available in January, they went early with that deal, and they tried to, obviously, and they've obviously done it in the January transfer window. But since that's not available anymore, I know the obvious thing is, can we just pivot to somebody else? But that's the one player that they deemed 40 million was worth it on, and I don't think they obviously see another opportunity in the market that's like that. And I think that was kind of the one-or punt, which we thought at the time, really. But obviously, he's ended up going to Wolves, and I don't think anyone's that angry about that, because I think the fees obviously, he's ended up going to Crystal Palace, but I don't think, as I said, the people are that angry because obviously the fee's just ridiculous. But yeah, that's kind of where it's at. The other thing that I want to say about the Strand Larsen thing, though, which I thought was interesting when I was sort of listening to or reading about Isaac Johnson talk about this morning, is that he basically said that Leeds United was sort of Strand Larsen's preferred choice, and I find this really annoying, actually. Not because look, Leeds United didn't put the money down that Crystal Palace did, and that's the situation. But why one time can't we just get a player force a move to Leeds United? Like in the summer, we had obviously the Pajau situation when we were higher than Marseille in terms of evaluation for him. Yet Marseille managed to get a line because basically Pajau forced his way to Marseille. Why once can we not have a time where sort of a player like Strand Larsen just goes, no, I want Leeds United, I'm going to Leeds United? Why when we're going for players, does it always seem like players are open to go anywhere, but we might get the sign over the line? But when there's other competition in it, seems like, oh no, I'm willing to go either way, even when my preference is Leeds United. I don't know. It just seems. Look, I'm not blaming Strand Larsen. I would have liked Strand Larsen. All that is true, but I did see that. I was like, oh, for goodness, can we not just have a bit of like someone just pressing to come to Leeds United? But yeah, that's the situation really. Like when have we ever hijacked somebody else's deal? It never seems to happen, does it? Danny was right saying because the money was going to come out of was going to go out the summer window. Yeah, it was. Sean says, imagine Strand Larsen signing for us at the last minute and scoring the winner against Forest if Carlsberg did a transfer window. I know, mate. If that would be absolute limbs, wouldn't it? That would be absolute limbs. I don't see that happening, obviously, and I don't want to come on and lie to you guys. That's my feeling. You know, I'm always authentic on this channel. I sort of say what I think. But I don't look. Strand Larsen's not going to happen, is it? If we're being totally honest. I also just think now, if part of me thinks that even if Mateta has failed his medical at Milan, which I think is possible, I don't think probably will happen, but it's plausible and possible. I just think Wolves would keep him. I don't think they'd take the 40 million from Leeds United. I think that's pretty dead on the table now, but I could be wrong. It's just a risk not to sign another player that could improve the squad. Yeah, I know what you mean, Jacob. I do know what you mean. And it is a risk. Like, we're going to talk, obviously, all about this at 8 p.m. if, obviously, United don't make an addition, which, obviously, with what Graham said now and what Sky are saying, that's obviously the way this is heading. And we'll talk about it. And obviously, a lot of the talk will be about Calvert-Lewin at 8 p.m. because that's where we're going to be at, because it's going to be Calvert-Lewin or bust till the end of the season, really. Because if he was to go down injured, maybe we could talk about Lucas Mecha, and at times I think he could cover Calvert-Lewin a bit, but not for an extended period at all. And it would be an absolute disaster if we were to lose if we were to lose Calvert-Lewin for a long period. I actually think it'd be a bit of a disaster if we lost Gary Goodmanson for a long period as well. We've been lucky that he's sort of come back in and come back ahead of schedule, but we need to be really careful there with him because we can't have a situation where he goes down as well. And obviously Calvert-Lewin's the same. They are serious worry points now. And as I said, we'll talk about all that. And we'll talk about all that at 8 p.m. tonight. Strand Larsen already completed his medical at Palace. There's literally no chance of that one happening now. Yeah, they haven't actually fully signed him yet, though, mate. So that's kind of where it comes from. But I agree with you. Pacify says 100% need signings, but right now we do not need Spertsyan. I agree. I don't think Spertsyan's the one at all. And I agree we need signings. I can't believe, to be honest, that they are willing to risk because the thing is, with where we're at the moment, we are in a really good position to stay in this division. And I just hope this window doesn't end up costing us. And I feel like if they could have just moved the needle on maybe an attacking a striker that could have covered the profile of sort of Calvert-Lewin, that might end up being the difference between us going down and staying up. And if that is the situation, I'm not saying it will be, because I still think we're in a good position, and Calvert-Lewin isn't injured at this moment in time, and that's the fact of it. And he talks about it being in the best shape of his life, and all this is true, but it will be a disappointment if that does let us down, because we've put ourselves in such a good position. We really have. The only thing I will say regarding all this, and again, I want to talk about all this more at 8 p.m, is that the last time we made moves in the January transfer window was the year we got relegated last time from the Premier League, and it made no difference. We brought in Wober, we brought in Rutter, and we brought in McKennie. None of them really worked. Wober maybe to an extent worked, but it still didn't save us in the season. We were still absolutely hopeless, and we still ended up getting relegated. And we spent, if we'd have stayed in the Premier League that season, we'd have spent 40 million or 35 million on Rutter, 32 million on McKennie, because he had an obligation to buy had we stayed in the league, and 15 million on Wober, which would have been around about 90 million pounds spend, and it made practically no difference. So look, I understand where people are at with the transfer window, but like, it doesn't mean just because you don't do transfers that you're now just going to be relegated. And actually, our best season probably in the last few years was a season we didn't actually sign anybody in the January transfer window, which was last year. Now, obviously, there was context applied, and we had a better squad for that division, quantifiably, naturally, than we do in this division for trying to stay up. I get all that, and that is an absolutely true statement. But that is something to bear in mind with this. Wilson Isidore for 20-25 million. Thoughts? I don't want Wilson Isidore, mate. He's completely the wrong profile. I also don't think he's worth that either. But he's not a tall physical striker at all. He's about sort of 5'10", 5'11", and he's not got, for me, got great hold up play. I don't think he's the right one. Isidore would be a nice sign actually, but it's not happening. I don't think it would. That's maybe you guys disagree with that, and obviously, I'm sure if Isidore was to come to the door, obviously he won't do. But if he was, then I'm sure we could probably get on board with it and talk about it. But for me, he's not the one, truthfully. Danny Rumsey says, smash a like and subscribe, please. Yeah, if you could do that, that would be massively appreciated. Obviously, as I said, it is the last transfer day of hopefully big videos for me. So if you could help that, that'd be brilliant. It's been, as I said, the sport's just been flawless. So I really can't fault you guys at all. You've been brilliant to me. Danny says, Palace side have said that even if Mateta falls through, Strand Larsen will still happen. Yeah, but why has it not happened then? Last time we got someone in January transfer window was Connor Roberts, and he didn't play. Yeah, exactly. DV LUFC says nothing will happen. Yeah, look, I agree with you, mate. I don't think anything will happen in truth. DV LUFC 77 says Fark should go to a 3-4-3 system. Now, this is something that's interesting, and again, this is something probably can talk about at a later time. I do think there is a potential that Leeds United do something like that soon. We're not far off doing that anyway at this moment, in terms of we've kind of got Jayden Bogle playing almost like a right winger in possession, and Rodon always covers in that right centre back. We've done this since the Palace game. And that's kind of how we've been playing. But I do think especially with Buonanotte coming in, could you push Aronson onto that left-hand side little sort of pocket, or play Nonto there and then play Buonanotte in that right-hand side pocket? Potentially. The only thing with that formation, naturally, is that you get left sort of astray in midfield, in terms of usually what happens in your midfield then is that you're overrun, because everyone plays, most teams with a 3 midfield, and then you'll be playing with a 2. But you've got to make sure then your number 10s drop in and help out your midfield. I could see them having a mystery loan sign lineup, and if that fell through at the 11th hour, typical end to the transfer window, says James Johnson. Yeah, look, I know what you mean, mate, and I get where you're coming from, but I don't even think that'll be it. I don't think there's anything going to happen. And I think when you listen to sort of what Graham said, you listen to sort of what Sky Sports have been saying, you listen to what Isaac's been saying. They're all pushing out the same thing, and they're doing this too early to make sure that there's not a massive pile on it at the end of the transfer window. Obviously, if you slowly sort of feed it to people, then by the end of the window you go, oh well, we knew this was going to happen anyway, and there's not that sort of massive disappointment at the end. And I think that's why we're seeing the club slowly leak it out now. I believe that DCL will stay fit all season, but his form will drop off without a second striker up with him. Mate, I don't think that's. It's a different way of looking at it. I don't think we can obviously say either way if Calvert-Lewin's going to get injured, because in even players that are not injury prone can get injured. Like, you can get a horror tackle and be out for the rest of the season. Like, anything can happen, and obviously Leeds United are going to be playing that risk now. So I don't know about that. Claymore says Eduard Spertsyan. Yeah. That's the name. He's the only name really we've been linked to. But again, we were here, weren't we, on deadline day last time, and you know, it's kind of a nonsense, really. Like, it felt like a nonsense. We've been playing a 3-4-3 a few times this season already. Yep. Aaron's would help a lot in the midfield 3-4-3, says DV LUFC. Yep, no, he would, and that's the way it'd have to go. It's clearly came from the club. It has. Also, as well, I think what's frustrating people is that obviously other clubs are looking at doing stuff. As I said, Forest have been trying to be active, but it's kind of a lot of them fall through. They've made a last approach for Hayden Hackney, who I think is a good player, but obviously ain't going to happen. That Engels has fallen through as well, who they were looking at from Celtic for about 17 to 20 million pounds. They went for Robin Goosens. That's fallen through. They've gone from a completely different method to Leeds United. They've gone really scattergun, and it hasn't really worked for them at all either. And as I said, their fans are quite frustrated. Obviously, in terms of West Ham's method, obviously we're all pleased at the weekend that Todibo, who is their best centre-back, got sent off. And he's obviously going to be missing now for 3 games, unless it obviously gets extended because of the extent of the red card offence that he did. Obviously, got grabbed jab hedge around the neck. But West Ham are sort of looking at another side now, which is obviously Axel Disasi, and that one looks like it might go through. The only situation with Axel Disasi, apparently, is that there is a situation where that could fall through because they're not 100% sure yet, or Jacob Steinberg said they're not 100% sure yet that he actually wants to move. So I think we'll have to wait and see with that. But you would expect that one probably does get done. Probably see BL fit for Friday to keep fans happy. I don't think they'll do that, mate. I don't think they'll do that. I also don't think as well, I don't think the meltdown, I should put it this way, I know I'm seeing a meltdown all over. Like, I saw a post that went out from Isaac Johnson and like there were about 20 replies, and it was all just like, that literally despise the club. I'm not there. I'm really not. I'm not quite as sort of adamantly angry and frustrated with the transfer windows of the people. I must admit, like, part of this, doing this that I do, you can go back and see what I was saying on last deadline day in the summer, and I was quite frustrated, to be honest with you. I thought we ended the window really poorly. I'm not like that this summer, and I think part of it is that kind of, well, what the signs they made in the summer actually were really good additions, and we actually are in a good position at this moment, and the 49ers have kind of been right so far with what they've done. So I've kind of got a bit of trust in them, that even though that they maybe know best in this situation, and sort of, look, we can have our opinions, but that's kind of where I'm at with it, and I'm sort of willing to give them the benefit of the doubt. And if they do keep us up, then, you know, we can all say fair play, and they did what was expected, and then we're going to have hopefully a really good summer budget, which is obviously what this will create, because we're not wasting summer budget in our January transfer window. So look, it's a risk, and I'm willing to sort of agree with all that, but I'm not quite as, I think there will be content creators, and I've listened to one this morning, sort of quite dissatisfied. And I look, I'm not particularly pleased, but I must admit, I'm not there. I'm not that. I just don't feel I'm that extreme with my feeling on it. But you know, that's up to them. And look, as I said, we always say on here, every opinions, people can have their own opinions. That's absolutely fine. Collecting ex-Leeds players, hail day the latest. Blunt's collecting ex-Leeds players. I'm not sure what you mean. Spertsyan is the next Ryan Kent rumours years ago. It does feel like that, doesn't it, mate? James Justin injured. If we see Gabby go down or is unfit, we could see Sam Byram, who I don't mind, but he's not Premier League level. Yeah, exactly, mate. But I've always felt throughout this transfer window, we talked about sort of left back as a sort of a priority position all window, really. But I don't think the club have ever looked to that. I think the club's only thing was, wow, well, maybe we'll get one more creator in, and wow, Strand Larsen's become available. Let's have a punt at him. Danny Rumsey says West Ham have brought players in spots they needed filling already. They have, yeah, and I think you are seeing the benefit now of them bringing in the strikers that they brought in. Obviously, they brought in Pablo and Castellanos. Even though I don't think them two are fantastic footballers, even though they're not, even though I don't think they're fantastic footballers, what that has allowed them to do is it's allowed Somerville to play wide left and it's allowed Bowen to play wide right. And for the whole season before this, Bowen's been playing up front, and you've seen a massive improvement in Somerville and Bowen since Bowen's been move on the right hand side. So even though I don't think Castellanos and Pablo are game changers for West Ham, it's meant that they can play with focal points and they don't have to put Jarrod Bowen up front, and it has made a huge difference to West Ham. And as I said, I do think they're going to be better than they were in the first half of the season. We always say this, they got 14 points in 19 in the first 19. They were never going to get that again for me. It's just, are they going to get enough? Because they're still only on 20 points. They might need another 20 points to stay in the league. That's going to be quite a challenge with the games that they've got left, because they've got quite a few tricky ones too. James Justin injured, and if Gabby go down, yeah, I've read that one. Daily fail on Eduard Spertsyan. Yeah, I don't think it's going to happen, mate. We've sort of said that quite early on. Gilthy Yank says, this is January 2012 all over again. Sheffield United brought in 6 players and ended up 10 points clear. West Ham doing the same. And we ended 10 points clear. Look, hopefully you're right, mate. Hopefully you're right. I must admit, I'm not as I said, I've seen a lot of negativity online about the transfer window. And I do understand it, because I think you look at sort of what other clubs are doing around us. I never felt this was going to happen with Leeds. I always felt we were going to have a bad transfer window, or what we would deem a bad transfer window. And I always felt teams around us were going to strengthen more. But that doesn't mean that they're going to definitely stay up. As I said, the last time we went and blasted a load of money in the January transfer window, we had our worst season we've had in years, where we actually got relegated from the division we're in. Obviously, when we brought in Voba, McKennie, and Rutter. So I don't think it's a situation where this means that we're definitely relegated. I'm not of that opinion, I must admit. Is DCL out for a few weeks? No, he's not, mate. Hopefully not. I don't know. I haven't seen anything about it if he is. Stephen says, I have faith in the 49ers and fact that they won't risk surviving unless they were confident in the side we've got. Yeah, hopefully, mate. I also think it's a PSR issue. Like, I know we don't want to bring back PSR, but we've got to be really careful with it, because we are teetering a really sort of fine line with it. So that's kind of where I'm at. Would anyone take a punt on Sterling if he's available on a free? Not for me, mate. Not for me. He wants 230 week wages. That's Sterling. Yeah, we shouldn't be going for Sterling. We just don't need that player. If there was a player like Sterling who was a striker and was a physical striker, then maybe let's have a look at it. But he isn't that. So, do you think it would take a bit of a club to get a club? Maybe take a pay cut. But again, still, it's not the profile we need. If Sterling in an alternative world was a 6'3" number 9 who could hold the ball up and bring people into play, and he had the experience he's got, and he was available on a free, I think Leeds United would look at doing that, but he isn't that, obviously. Matt says, one injury to a centre-back or striker and win trouble. Or full-back or striker and win trouble. Yeah, I think that's fair, mate. I think that's fair. Look, when we spent bad in the January transfer window, it didn't work out. I do agree with that. Milan's still not confirmed on Mateta. Yeah, I know that's gonna bash on and bash on. The thing is with Strand Larsen thing now is, as I said, even if that falls through, one, I don't think Wolves are now sell to us because it's just too late. Although they do have a replacement lined up, obviously, in Shea Adams, and they've obviously getting Adam Armstrong. And the other thing with the Wolves situation now is, would they just take him to the end of the season? I don't know. There's apparently reports that he hasn't even got a relegation release clause. I would imagine he probably has, and I think that's probably nonsense. But I could be wrong, and he might not have. So yeah, that's kind of where. Milan doctor wanting him in London as we speak. Apparently he's in Paris, actually. Apparently he's in Paris is Mateta. Yeah. So look, we'll see how that goes. But even if that was to fall through, it'd take an absolute unbelievable amount of luck for the then to be come all the way up to Leeds, have his medical, and Leeds United sign him off before the 7 p.m. deadline. It just seems like it just seems really unlikely that at this point that's going to happen. Bought Okafor for 17 million, who I believe is not much better than Laji Ramazani. I think there was also reports, wasn't there, that something was going to happen with Ramazani and potentially we're going to loan him back or something. Obviously, it looks like none of that's happened either. We could go back in for a late bid for Harry Wilson. We nearly got him last time. I just don't see it. I don't see it. Also, again, Harry Wilson, in truth, look, I like Harry Wilson. He's had an unbelievable season, and what an addition it would have been had we done it in the summer. If he'd have replicated the form he's replicated for Fulham this season, as hopefully would have done it had he signed for Leeds. But in the same breath, we've brought Berinotte in, who is a left-footed attacking midfield player, who was a very similar profile to Harry Wilson. So if we hadn't have done that, maybe Wilson would have been a really good one for Leeds United and a really obvious signing to try do at last minute. But we have brought Harry Wilson in, so I kind of think that sort of fixes that position that we had. But I don't know. I'm a bit sort of not sure on that. Danny says Jacob Ramazani can do backflips. Okafor can't. Yeah, well, there is that. But yeah. Anyway, I feel like we're coming to the natural close of this video or this stream. However, we will be back at 8 p.m. and the 8 p.m. show I'm quite looking forward to, because I don't think anything's going to happen between now and the end of the window. Obviously, if something does happen, we'll go live, we'll cover it, all that sort of stuff. I am off today because of this kind of the transfer window reason. But so we will cover it if anything does go live. I don't expect it. So we'll be back at 8 p.m. and we'll sort of talk about the review of the transfer window. We'll go into a bit more detail about sort of what Berinotte can give us as well, because I must admit, I do kind of feel that sign's been pushed to the side and people are just completely forgetting that we've done that deal. But actually, I do think he plugs quite a good goal for us. And I don't want to be just a happy clapper, and that's not what we're trying to do here. As I said, if you'd have watched me in the summer, you'd have known that I was really frustrated with what we did, especially at the end of the window. But I was expecting this in January. I was. We talked about this loads going into the window, what our expectations was, and this was kind of what I thought was going to happen. And that looks like it's materialised. But we will talk about the transfer window. Where are Leeds United coming out of it? We're still in a good position, obviously, still 6 points ahead, although obviously naturally teams have strengthened around us. Obviously, we'll get the updates if Disasi signed as well for West Ham at that point. And if that obviously is going to impact their season, I don't think it's going to be I don't think it's going to be a great addition for them. I think Howard Bellis was obviously the better one, but we will see on that as well. But we'll cover all that at 8 p.m. It might end up being quite a long stream. So I'll be interested to see what you guys all think. Steve says Dan James will be back soon. That we will feel like having a new player in with him missing so much of the season. Yeah, I don't like the new signing element to what you're saying, but I know what you say. I think that's fair. Strand Larsen's tweet from Fab saying Mateta deal depends on it going through. Okay, well we'll see. But as I said, even if the Mateta deal forces the Strand Larsen deal to fall through, I don't feel like that's going to end up with Leeds United signing him. I think we're too late now. I think we're now at nearly 2 p.m. Or half one, should I say? We've got the window shuts at 7, so we've got 5.5 hours left. It feels unlikely, doesn't it? It feels unlikely. Disasi's having a medical as we speak. Get West Ham's. Yeah, that is what is going on. It's just if he actually agrees to join, because apparently he's a bit on the edge with it. Strand Larsen won't need a medical at Leeds. Just ask Palace to forward on the medical memo. Job done. But, I'm not sure that's quite how it works, but maybe. And Radby Lee says, see you later. Yeah, so anyway, I will wrap it up there, everyone. Thanks all for watching, as always. As I said, definitely come back at 8 p.m. and we'll get into the whole detail of where we're at as well now, and sort of the roundup of the transfer window. And as I said, if anything does drop, not that I'm expecting to, we will be live. But thanks all for watching. If you have just joined, we've talked about Leeds United for 27 minutes and 39 seconds right now. So you're more than welcome to skip back, because I know quite a people have just joined the last sort of 5-10 minutes or so, and listen to the rest of that. We talk all about sort of Spursian, all about what's been going on, really. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed it as always, and I'll see you again at 8 p.m. And also, if you could subscribe, all that good stuff as well, it does massively help the channel. See you later, everybody. Bye for now.